The Wild West wasn't cowboys and heroic gunfights. It was something far more disturbing. Doctors drilled holes in people's skulls as entertainment. Children were sold like cattle. And the most famous lawmen? They were actually cold-blooded murderers protected by badges. What you're about to discover will completely destroy everything Hollywood taught you about the Old West. This is the truth they desperately don't want in history books. The romanticized Wild West is a lie, a carefully constructed fantasy designed to hide one of the darkest periods in American history. Today, you're getting 25 secrets so disturbing, so brutal, that they've been systematically erased from every textbook. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a Western movie the same way again. Let's expose what they've been hiding. Number 1. The bathroom nightmare. Let's start with something they definitely skip in school. There were no bathrooms. None. People used chamber pots that were dumped directly into the streets every morning. Towns literally smelled like open sewers. But here's the truly disgusting part. Toilet paper didn't exist. People used corn cobs, newspaper, or literally just their hands. Dysentery killed more people than gunfights ever did. The romantic saloon you see in movies? It reeked of human waste, unwashed bodies, and death. And it gets worse. Outhouses were shared by entire communities, breeding grounds for disease. In winter, the contents would freeze, creating toxic ice towers. Come spring, the smell was so overpowering people would vomit just walking past. Flies swarmed everywhere, spreading disease from waste to food. The average frontier town had more cases of intestinal parasites than people. Welcome to reality. Number 2. Dentistry was pure torture. Forget the dentist. In the Wild West, anyone could pull your teeth. Barbers, blacksmiths, even the local drunk. No anesthesia. They'd tie you to a chair, give you whiskey, and rip out your tooth with pliers designed for horseshoes. The infection rate? Nearly 100%. People died from tooth infections regularly. And if you needed a filling? They used molten lead poured directly into your cavity. The screams could be heard across town. Number 3. Child labor was legal and expected. Children, as young as 5, worked 12-hour shifts in mines. They were called breaker boys, and their job was to sort coal with their bare hands until their fingers bled and broke. Orphans were sold to ranchers as unpaid labor, essentially slavery with a different name. Thousands died in industrial accidents that were never reported. If a child died in a mine collapse, the company simply grabbed another orphan. Their lives had zero value. In textile mills, children lost fingers in machinery daily. Supervisors would beat children who slowed down or fell asleep. Many were deliberately kept malnourished so they'd stay small enough to fit into tight mining shafts. Parents who couldn't afford food would sell their own children to labor camps for a few dollars. Some children never saw daylight for years, working underground from dawn to dusk. The few who survived to adulthood were physically destroyed, with bent spines, ruined lungs, and missing limbs. Number 4. The average lifespan was 35 years old. Let that sink in. 35 years old. If you made it to 40, you were considered elderly. By 50, you were a walking miracle. Disease, violence, accident, childbirth, infections from minor cuts, everything was a death sentence. The old wise gunslinger in movies? That character didn't exist. Most gunslingers were dead before 25. Number 5. Prostitution was the biggest industry. Here's what they don't tell you. Nearly 1 in 3 women in frontier towns were sex workers, not by choice. They were trafficked, kidnapped, or sold by their own families. Chinese women were smuggled in crates and auctioned like livestock. The average lifespan of a frontier prostitute? 3 years. They died from disease, violence, suicide, or drug overdoses. Their bodies were dumped in unmarked graves outside town limits. Nobody cared. Brothel owners kept women locked in rooms, addicted to opium to ensure compliance. Girls as young as 12 were forced into the trade. If they tried to escape, they were hunted down and beaten publicly as a warning. Many women had their passports and papers stolen, making them prisoners with no legal identity. Towns built their entire economies on this exploitation. Sheriffs were paid off to look the other way. Churches preached morality on Sundays, while town leaders profited from trafficking the rest of the week. The hypocrisy was staggering. Number 6. Doctors were basically butchers. Medical school wasn't required to be a doctor. You could literally print business cards and start cutting people open. Most surgeons were failed veterinarians. Amputation was the solution for everything. Broken leg, amputation. Infected finger? Amputation. They didn't wash their hands or sterilize instruments. The same saw used on a horse would be used on your leg 5 minutes later. The survival rate for surgery? About 20%. Number 7. Laudanum was liquid heroin for everyone. Every general store sold laudanum, liquid opium mixed with alcohol. It was marketed to children for teething pain. Adults drank it like water for headaches, anxiety, or boredom. Entire towns were addicted. Mothers gave it to crying babies, creating infant addicts. When you see those sleepy cowboys in old photos, they're not tired, they're high on opiates. Addiction destroyed more families than anything else. Number 8. Scalping wasn't just Native Americans. Here's a truth that'll make you sick. White settlers and the U.S. military scalped people too. In fact, several states offered bounties for Native American scalps. California paid $5 per scalp, no questions asked. This created professional scalp hunters who murdered entire villages, including women and children, for profit. But it gets worse. They couldn't tell the difference between Native American and Mexican scalps, so they just killed everyone with dark hair. Thousands of innocent people were murdered and mutilated for bounty money. Number 9. Most famous lawmen were serial killers. Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok, Doc Holliday. They're portrayed as heroes. The truth? They were murderers who hid behind badges. Wyatt Earp was involved in multiple claim-jumping schemes and possibly murdered prospectors for their gold. He ran protection rackets and rigged gambling operations. Wild Bill Hickok shot a man in the back during a card game and claimed self-defense. He killed dozens in ambushes, never in fair fights. Doc Holliday was a tuberculosis-infected dentist who killed at least 8 men in cold blood, coughing blood on his victims as they died. The OK Corral gunfight. It was a premeditated assassination by corrupt lawmen against cowboys who threatened their criminal enterprises. These men would be imprisoned today, but it gets darker. Many lawmen supplemented their income by robbing the very people they were supposed to protect. They'd tip off outlaw gangs about gold shipments, then split the profits. If witnesses emerged, those witnesses mysteriously disappeared. The badge wasn't a symbol of justice. It was a license to murder and steal without consequence. Number 10. Slavery continued after the Civil War. Texas didn't free enslaved people until 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But here's the real secret. Slavery just changed forms. Native Americans were enslaved throughout the West under indentured servitude contracts. Chinese immigrants were worked to death building railroads under contracts they couldn't read. And black people who were freed were immediately arrested for vagrancy and sold back into forced labor through the convict lease system. Slavery never ended, they just renamed it. Listen, if you're still watching, you're clearly someone who wants the real truth, not the sanitized version. This channel is dedicated to exposing what they hide from us. Hit that subscribe button right now because we're just getting started. And what's coming next is even more disturbing. Don't miss out. Subscribe now. Number 11. Cannibalism happened regularly. The Donner Party wasn't unique. Cannibalism occurred frequently during harsh winters, wagon train disasters, and mining expeditions. Multiple documented cases exist of people eating their dead companions to survive. But here's the disturbing part. Some mining camps developed a taste for it. There are accounts of prospectors who continued the practice even when food was available. These cases were covered up to prevent panic and maintain the illusion of civilized expansion. Number 12. The water would kill you. Every water source was contaminated. Rivers were filled with animal corpses, human waste, and mining runoff containing mercury and arsenic. Towns built downstream from mining operations had water that was literally poisonous. People knew the water was bad, so they drank alcohol instead. Beer for breakfast, whiskey for lunch, more beer for dinner. Entire populations were perpetually drunk because it was safer than water. Cholera and typhoid epidemics wiped out whole towns in weeks. Number 13. Native American genocide was systematic. This wasn't just conflict, it was orchestrated extermination. The U.S. military poisoned food supplies, burned crops before winter, and distributed smallpox-infected blankets intentionally. Entire tribes were wiped out by manufactured diseases. Colonel John Chivington ordered his troops to kill native children because nits make lice. At Sand Creek, soldiers murdered over 200 peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho, mostly women and children, and mutilated their bodies. Soldiers cut out women's genitals to make tobacco pouches. They wore body parts as trophies. This was official U.S. military policy. Officers who showed mercy were court-martialed. Soldiers who committed the worst atrocities received promotions and medals. The government offered bounties for proof of kills, scalps, hands, even private parts. Entire military campaigns were designed not to defeat warriors in battle, but to starve entire populations through winter by destroying food sources. Concentration camps were established where Native Americans were deliberately underfed and exposed to disease. Survivors of massacres were hunted for sport. Children were kidnapped and sent to boarding schools where they were beaten for speaking their own language, their culture systematically erased. This wasn't war, it was industrialized genocide with paperwork and quotas. Number 14. Lynching was entertainment. Public hangings weren't just executions, they were social events. Families brought picnics. Children were given the day off school to watch. Photographers sold souvenir photos of corpses. Vendors sold food and drinks to the crowds. But the real horror, most people lynched were innocent. Accusations required no evidence. Any crime, any accusation, any reason was enough. And it wasn't just about race. White people lynched other white people over property disputes, romantic rivalries, or simple grudges. The body would hang for days as a warning. Sometimes mobs would torture victims for hours before killing them. They'd cut off fingers, burn them with hot irons, castrate them while alive. Crowds would cheer with each act of brutality. After death, body parts were taken as souvenirs. Fingers, ears, even teeth were kept in jars or made into jewelry. These weren't criminals being punished. These were public torture murders for entertainment. Newspapers would announce lynchings in advance like concert schedules. Special trains were chartered to bring spectators. Thousands would gather to watch a human being tortured to death, then go home and tuck their children into bed like it was a normal Sunday afternoon. Number 15. Mental illness meant torture. If you showed signs of mental illness, you were locked in an asylum where treatment meant ice baths, beatings, and being chained to walls. Doctors drilled holes in skulls to release evil spirits. They performed lobotomies with ice picks through eye sockets. Patients were displayed to paying audiences as entertainment. Most people sent to asylums never came out. Families used them to dispose of inconvenient relatives. Women who talked back to their husbands were committed permanently. Number 16. Food was disgusting and deadly. There were no food safety laws. Meat was sold rotten and crawling with maggots. Merchants mixed sawdust into flour and chalk into sugar. Milk was diluted with water from contaminated rivers and mixed with formaldehyde to keep it from spoiling. Canned foods often contained lead that slowly poisoned consumers. Spoiled food was normal. If it didn't kill you immediately, it was considered safe. Food poisoning was a daily occurrence. But it gets more disturbing. Butchers sold horse meat as beef, rat meat as sausage, and dog meat as pork. Bread often contained plaster or ground bones as filler. Coffee was mixed with roasted acorns and dirt. Alcohol was cut with kerosene, turpentine, and even embalming fluid. People went blind from drinking methanol-laced whiskey. Restaurants served meals in kitchens infested with rats and cockroaches. Cooks never washed their hands, often handling raw meat and then serving food without cleaning anything. Cross-contamination wasn't a concept that existed. A knife used to gut a diseased animal would be used to cut your bread 5 minutes later. Eating out was essentially a game of Russian roulette. Number 17. Chinese immigrants were hunted for sport. The Chinese Exclusion Act wasn't enough for many Americans. In Rock Springs, Wyoming, white miners murdered 28 Chinese workers and burned their homes. In Los Angeles, a mob lynched 18 Chinese immigrants in a single night. Towns across the West held Chinese removal days, where gangs drove out entire communities, burning businesses and murdering anyone who resisted. These weren't isolated incidents. They were organized pogroms that happened in dozens of towns. Number 18. Childbirth was a death sentence. 1 in 5 women died during childbirth, or shortly after. There were no sterile conditions, no trained midwives in most areas, and certainly no hospitals. Women gave birth in filthy cabins, often alone or with help from drunk neighbors. If there were complications, the baby was cut out with kitchen knives while the mother was awake. If the mother hemorrhaged, she simply bled to death. Surviving childbirth was considered a miracle. Doctors, if you could even find one, would deliver babies with the same unwashed hands they'd used to perform autopsies hours earlier. Puerperal fever, caused by bacterial infection, killed thousands of new mothers within days of giving birth. Breech births were almost always fatal for both mother and child. If labor lasted too long, the baby would die inside the mother, and removing it often killed her too. Many women died from eclampsia, hemorrhaging, or simply from exhaustion and blood loss. There was no blood transfusion, no antibiotics, no pain relief beyond whiskey. Women would bite down on leather straps and scream for hours. Some begged to be shot to end the suffering. Infant mortality was equally horrific. Half of all babies died before age 5. Number 19. Gunfights were rare, but murder was constant. The dramatic, quick-draw duels you see in movies, they almost never happened. Real violence was ambushes, shootings in the back, poisonings, and beatings. Men murdered each other over card games, insults, or drunken arguments. But most murders were never investigated. There was no forensic science, no real law enforcement in most places. Killers simply left town and started over somewhere else. The murder rate in Wild West towns was extraordinarily high, but most deaths were ruled accidental or ignored entirely. Number 20. Animal cruelty was socially acceptable. Horses were literally worked to death and abandoned when they collapsed. Dogfighting and bear baiting were popular entertainment. Men would bury dogs up to their necks and use them for target practice. Cats were set on fire for fun. Animals had absolutely no legal protections. The casual cruelty extended to everything living. This brutality toward animals reflected the complete lack of empathy in frontier society. Number 21. The Pony Express riders were children. The famous Pony Express hired boys as young as 11 because they were light and expendable. These children rode 75 miles through hostile territory, often dying from exposure, attacks, or being thrown from horses. The company preferred orphans because there was nobody to complain when they died. Parents who couldn't feed their children would hand them over to the Pony Express knowing they'd probably never see them again. It was legal child sacrifice for mail delivery. Number 22. Dueling was legal murder. Even after the Civil War, dueling remained legal in many territories. Men could murder someone in a fair fight and face zero consequences, but these weren't fair. Wealthy men hired professional duelists to kill their enemies legally. Politicians eliminated opponents through duels. If someone challenged you and you refused, you were branded a coward and socially destroyed. Accepting meant likely death. It was a system designed to let powerful men murder legally. Number 23. Tuberculosis was everywhere and unstoppable. TB, called consumption, killed 1 in 7 people. It was highly contagious and had no cure. People infected with TB moved to the West, thinking dry air would cure them, but they just spread it everywhere. Sanitariums were death houses where patients slowly suffocated while coughing up blood. Families abandoned TB victims in the desert to die alone. The disease was so common that most people accepted they'd probably get it eventually. But here's what makes it truly horrifying. People knew it was contagious, but did nothing. Infected people continued working, spitting blood into shared water barrels, coughing into crowded rooms. Saloons had spittoons filled with bloody phlegm that were emptied once a week. The smell was unbearable. Children played in streets where consumptive patients had spat for years. Entire families would be wiped out within months once one member caught it. The disease destroyed lungs slowly, drowning victims in their own blood over months or years. Toward the end, patients would cough up pieces of their own lung tissue. Death came by slow suffocation. Fully conscious, there was no dignity, no relief, just endless suffering until the final breath. Number 24. Justice was for sale. Judges, sheriffs, and lawyers were corrupt. Whoever paid the most won the case. Land rights went to the highest bidder. Innocent people were hanged because someone paid the judge more. False testimony was purchased routinely. If a wealthy ranch owner wanted your land, the sheriff would arrest you on fabricated charges, a paid witness would testify against you, and the judge would sentence you to hang or prison. Your land was then sold at auction to the same ranch owner. This was standard procedure. Number 25. The worst secret. It was all intentional. Here's the final, most disturbing truth. The government knew. They knew about the violence, the corruption, the genocide, the exploitation. It was all part of the plan. The chaos served to clear land of Native Americans, exploit desperate immigrants and workers, and allow wealthy industrialists to build empires without regulation. The Wild West wasn't wild by accident. It was deliberately kept lawless to serve economic interests. The suffering of millions was considered acceptable collateral damage for westward expansion and profit. If this video opened your eyes to the truth they've been hiding, then you need to subscribe right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're exposing more buried history that powerful people don't want you to know. Don't let them keep you in the dark. Subscribe now. So there you have it. 25 dark secrets about the Wild West that destroy the romantic myth completely. This wasn't a land of opportunity and heroic cowboys. It was a nightmare of exploitation, murder, disease, and corruption on an industrial scale. The next time you watch a Western, remember, the real West was far more horrifying than any movie could show. The truth was buried because it's too ugly, too brutal, too shameful to admit. But now you know. Share this video so others can learn what really happened. The truth matters, no matter how dark it is. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we uncover even more disturbing truths they don't want you to know.